blink, it's kind of a going that way. Anyways, Mr. Matthias is here in his capacity with us as the Director of Social Security. However, Mr. Matthias doesn't know the rules, and we're the ones which we're going to introduce him to now. And so normally, Mr. Matthias, we spend a few minutes talking about your non-professional side, well, your non-social security side. Just so you know, the audience, because we're the ones, is really about us on a wider scale. He's looking and he's smiling. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, so that, you know, our audience can know a little about Mr. Matthias when he's not busy as the Director of Social Security. I will give you a little of his background. How far back should I go?
As far back as you can remember.
I remember. Okay, well, we met at State College, Antigua State College, where we did our sixth form together. And yes, we've been friends ever since, kind of, sort of, yes. Yeah. And then we worked together at the Ministry of Finance. Yes. I know in terms of community service that you were once, should I say once, or you still are? Member of the Boys Brigade?
I still am.
You said when I say when to interact with, we're gonna have to work on that. That is an important of dealing with our young people.
That's not an invitation, Mr. Coates.
Thank you, Jupiter. Sorry?
I was telling Mr. Coates that's not an invitation to call me.
Mr. Coates, yes, he really needs to come back, you know, and be active. He told me just before we start, it's a new year, and it's time for us to go and do things that we know we should do. Right, Mr. Matthias?
Yes, something like that.
Yes. So here we are. All right. So tell us a little bit more about you besides the little that I just did.
There isn't really much else.
What?
There really isn't much else
what?
to say.
You live, breathe, and sleep Social Security?
Apparently, yes.
I don't believe that.
That is the full extent of my life. I wake up, I think about Social Security. I go to sleep, I think about Social Security. I'm almost convinced I dream Social Security.
Why do you think so much about Social Security, Mr. Director?
Because it's something that's important to me to get done.
What about it is so important? Curious.
It needs to change, and things need to change.
Social Security needs to change.
Yeah.
The Social Security as it operates in Antigua and Barbuda needs to change.
Yes, Social Security as it operates in Antigua and Barbuda needs to change.
So now we get to the end of our conversation quite early. No, we will not. We will come back to the need to change. So let's start at the beginning. You have been at Social Security for how long?
11 years.
Is so long?
Yes.
Damn. Is so long I left government? Damn. Okay, yes. Right. And during your tenure there, has the scheme grown, expanded, gotten stronger, gotten weaker? I want a general overview of Social Security 11 years. Notice I didn't say the 46 years it is, right. 47.
Everyone knows our tagline, growing to provide. One of the first things I said when I got there, I don't know if we're still growing, but in truth, when you look at it, we still are, because we haven't reached, even though we've matured in years, we haven't reached that fruit-bearing period of Social Security as yet, where you have a greater amount of persons drawing pensions from it. Thankfully, that is another.
You want, explain that again. You're saying we haven't reached a point where we have a larger number of persons drawing? Mm-hmm. You're anticipating that coming?
Yes, it has to come.
Okay,
in every Social Security system, it has to come.
Mm-hmm.
There will come a day that there will be more call on Social Security than there will be going into it.
Okay, could you pull the microphone a little bit closer to you? Yes, go ahead.
Any closer?
Okay, that's better. No, I mean, no, because I'm getting feedback from the listeners. Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, that's better. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, so I know that ultimately one day there will come a point in time when more will be asked of Social Security than resources would be there to provide. So the plan really is to position us to be as strong as we need to be for when that day comes.
And so you're saying that we're not at that point now?
No.
So now we are basically able to look after the needs of our pensioners as well as all the other persons who draw on Social Security.
Yes.
All right. So you're saying that, because the reason why I asked that, I know many persons are concerned that monthly we are tardy in terms of payment sometimes. But you're saying notwithstanding that, we're not at a point where there's a major crisis?
Crisis is the wrong word. There is a challenge, and that challenge does revolve around the timely flows cash.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, Social Security is pretty sound. The issue for us in the short term is to fix those cash shortages such that they can be more timely. And I'm always one of those persons who object to the use of the term timely, because nowhere does it say when. It just says that I have to.
That you have to do what? That
I
you
have
have to
to pay.
provide. Yes, but it
I
has
have
to be
to
within a
pay.
reasonable time, David.
And
Mr.
the
Matthias,
reason is all right. I'm accustomed to you. Right?
Ladies and gentlemen, that's a good custom, okay? All right, go ahead.
Right. The usual or timely manner for me is at least 1 week within the following month, the month ending. Right. So if it goes beyond that, just know that we're experiencing even greater challenges in the receipt of funds, because the system has evolved over the years, but the one principle hasn't changed, which is we are pay as you go. We were never fully funded, which in essence means that if there were 10 persons who were entitled to a pension in 1973, when the system started, then for it to be funded would have meant that government would have provided the funds for those 10 persons, and all Social Security would have had to have done is just to hand it over and to collect in an effort to pay. Yeah?
Yep.
So that's just it.
All right. I wanted to address something very early up before we go dallying around. There is this discussion I've had with some folks about if Social Security falls short of funds, who has the primary responsibility to ensure that the scheme can pay?
The government.
Based on?
The Social Security Act.
Just give us a little bit, just so that people understand. You said the government based on Social Security.
What the Act specifically states, which is the Social Security Act, that's Cap 408, Section 15, it actually states this. Any temporary insufficiency of the fund, which is the Social Security Fund, must be met from the consolidated fund.
Okay.
So we are an obligation of the government. Having worked in finance, I know you're well aware of this, where the first draw on that very consolidated fund is pensions.
Yes.
So that's what it is.
All right. Now, let us now look a little bit closer at this Social Security. We know that we pay, when we get paid, most of us who gets paid, we get deductions and the funds go into Social Security. What's the profile? Can you share with us the profile of those of us who pay funds into Social Security? What approximately how many persons pay Social Security now?
The last count that I have, which would be our last statistical review, we have about 40,700 odd active insured contributors to Social Security. This number tends to fluctuate between that 38 and 44, depending upon the time of year or the season. So like the season is on now, if I did a count, I'm more likely to find something closer to 43,000 persons. All right. Now, we know at Social Security we don't cover all of the persons who are employed in Antigua. One of the reasons why we know this is that we know that there's a significant growth in the number of persons who are self-employed.
How are you so sure that there's a significant growth?
Because you can look, let's go back to specifics. Let's look at 2009 when you had the Stanford collapse. And what we saw then is that a number of the professionals that were working with Bank of Antigua did not seek employment elsewhere. What they did is that they opened their own shops.
Right.
Right? Now, if you take that as a snapshot of what takes place, that is the number of lawyers that graduate, the number of engineers and the like, and you're not seeing them coming on the roll elsewhere, then technically that means that they are working for themselves. The challenge is, because they may not put up shingles or advertise that this is what I'm doing, it is to actually find them, which falls to my inspectorate team to actually keep a track on these persons.
Before you get to the role of your inspectorate team, I want to go back, because you have just said that you are able to, the Social Security is able to look at the society and track how we would have moved. For example, how those of us who would have been working at place X, that might have evolved. You don't see us come back in the system somewhere else. So, and you know, we're still in Antigua, so we must have gone somewhere else. How is this just based on persons sitting in a room doing this, or is it that Social Security does do regular assessment of where the economy is going and how things are happening?
Well, we have to do a regular assessment of where the economy is going, because our lifeblood does come from the economy, specifically the labor market. But beyond that, the challenge for the inspectorate is to keep track of all persons who are. There's only one way to know if a person is compliant. That is to know all those persons that should be working with that individual, all those persons that should be working in Antigua. We accept that there are going to be individuals that we are totally unaware of. All right. One of the significant challenges that we have had is the entertainment cohort. All right, because you have several persons who are entertainers. Right, they have work permits as entertainers, but
they have work permits
as entertainers. They are at
you mean people who are coming in?
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about, but when you said entertainers, I was thinking of like regular entertainers, like the Calypsonians.
No.
So
I don't mean like Calypsonians. Those are easy to track. Those are easy to track.
Or soca artists who
those
do that
easy
for their
to track.
full-time living.
Those are easy to track. I'm talking about the exotic dancers, the hostesses, etc.
Okay.
Right. They are also classed as entertainers. The challenge with that is that the primary source of their income may not necessarily come from the act of entertainment. We will go no further.
Let me just put on the record, if their primary source of income comes from a source that is not quote unquote legal, then they shouldn't be paying deductions on it.
No, they cannot pay
Precisely.
deductions on it.
So then you don't need to track that. All you need to track is their legal sources of income.
Correct, and their legal sources of income, because they would technically be self-employed individuals unless they're working with an establishment. Right? And if they're working with that establishment and they're paid a salary, their salary is what the deductions come from. If you're self-employed and your drawings from your self-employment is less than the minimum wage, you are by Social Security regulations exempt from making payments to Social Security. But
nobody's supposed to be working for less than the minimum wage by law.
There are quite a few people in Antigua who are self-employed who do not earn.
Oh, self-employed, yes.
Yeah,
okay, apologies.
who do not earn sufficient to attract Social Security.
They shouldn't be working for themselves. Just a thought. Anyways, yes, yeah. Okay, so we understand that basic parameter. So within the context then of Social Security being aware of where most of us are supposed to be, so that you can potentially capture them, and your inspectorate then has to go out and do their due diligence. What percentage would you say of the self-employed segment of our employment of our labor force the Social Security captures now?
About 35%.
What?
About 35%. And
that's like a bit of people, boss.
That is a little bit of people, and as oxymoronish as it sounds to say it, we are actually one of the better systems in terms of managing the self-employed.
Compared to?
The only country that is doing much better than us would be Singapore.
Clearly, and we know why.
Right, because that's a totally command economy. So you cannot do any business there without being registered, without this, without whatever.
But don't you have to be registered here to do business?
No. Well, no and yes at the same time. One has to register one's business that is with intellectual property. One does not have to actually register in order to do business. If you would recall, some time ago we did away with the business licensing.
Oh, I was coming to that.
Right, so without that
during that period, were you capturing more businesses?
You would have, because then persons would require to declare themselves in order to be able to access that license. Now that there's no requirement to have a license to operate, then it's I don't want to say it's an open market, but it's fairly much an open market. It therefore means that if a person wishes to operate totally under the radar, they don't have bank accounts, they have no auditors, they have no accountants, they simply strictly operate cash.
What kind of business you're providing that allows you to operate totally, if it's not illegal?
It's not illegal. There are lots of electricians, plumbers, engineers that operate purely on a cash basis. Okay. Right? They don't want to be tracked. They want to leave no footprint. They're completely off the grid as much as possible.
And would the business registration have aided in capturing those kind of things better?
Yes, because then for you to be able to ply your trade, you needed to register. One of the things that CARICOM has tried to do with the whole advent of skill certificate and accreditation boards is that because we recognize that self-employed persons are the backbone of most of our economies, the freedom of those individuals to move from island to island meant you had to ensure that a person had a basic or core set of skill sets that enabled you to say, well, this is a qualified, capable plumber. If you're in the United States or in the United Kingdom, you wouldn't be able to practice plumbing without your guild certificate. So if you didn't have your guild certificate as well as your union certificate, you couldn't practice. Right?
And we don't have any such regulations.
We don't have those
here.
regulations. They may come, but we don't currently have them.
Okay. Does any Caribbean islands have them?
Yes.
Okay.
You can't walk into Trinidad or Jamaica without.
I just want our folks to. I just want our folks to be aware that this is not like we're asking for something novel for Antigua.
No.
Right. Okay. So we know that we are undercovered with our self-employed personnel. Based on our established businesses now, that higher numbers of persons, is Social Security comfortable that they have adequate coverage?
Yeah.
Oh,
well, we are fairly comfortable that we're between 85 to 95% coverage with regards to the private sector, or with those persons who are employed. That is the formal sector. As a matter of fact, as much as we have some debates internally as to what is the real rate of compliance between the private and government, it's heartening to say that for both we're looking at somewhere in not less than 80, right, and for some greater than 93.
Okay. So based on your database that you have at Social Security, what is the average? No, shall I ask about the average earnings?
You can ask.
What's the most popular? Forget about average. What is the most popular income bands or wage earning bands? I'm going from average. Average doesn't help us to see much.
Yeah, I know.
Right. So let's go for popular. Forget average. Let's go. Most people in Antigua earn what?
The most frequently reported salary. I'm going to go with the mode. I'm going with the modal rather than median or average.
No, we're not doing average though. No, I don't want to do average. So average doesn't help us.
The most frequently reported salary or wage rather is $1,700. Now, the downside of that is that we know that the ILO suggests that a living wage today is somewhere between $2,500 and $3,000.
For who?
For just worldwide. There's a world average that they've taken. Right? $2,500 to $3,000.
EC dollars? Well, the equivalent in EC dollars.
Yes.
Okay.
It's what they deem to be a decent, livable wage.
All right, and that's so today the most reported wage is just about $1,700,
which is almost half of that.
Hold on, cast your mind back about 5 years ago. I'm not picking it for any reason. People are gonna get picky. About what was if you can remember, the most
popular?
Yeah.
You're going much less than the 17.
How much less is much less?
That was roughly about $1,000.
5 years ago?
Yeah. Okay.
And the devil's advocate, I'm going to push the button. If you can remember, maybe 5 years before that, would it have been higher than the 1,000? It was lower.
It was lower.
What?
It has been moving up. What has happened is,
boss, that's no money. Sorry.
No, look at, you have to remember, we're going back to statistics now. So if your base is greater,
I'm following.
Right. So the base is greater.
No.
Those persons who are at the base are the persons who earn less than $3,000.
Right.
Right. The most popular salary.
Yes. So the most popular salaries are just about $1,700 today. Right. Which was about $1,000 5 years ago, and even less before that.
Correct.
All right. Now, another question for us relates to the wages that you collect. Have you seen an improvement in the numbers of persons who fall within that recommended wage category for ILO over 5-7 years? In other words, I'm doing a very rough test of our standard of living.
I know what you're asking me, and the simple answer to that question is that the majority is below.
Yes, and I accept that. We agree on that. What I'm asking you is, notwithstanding that the majority is below. All right. Okay, fine. I will come back to that.
No, notwithstanding that the majority is below.
Are we seeing more persons moving up, even if it's marginal? Is there any movement of more persons up beyond the 1,700.
Yeah, there is movement for persons beyond the 1,700. It's heartening to recognize that more work is being done to balance everything that is taking place. The challenge for us is that there are lots of employers in Antigua who have yet to accept that the value that is added to their business through their employees, it's actually your employees that generate your wealth, right? For the most part, because we're not really...
And I'm saying, because I'm agreeing with you, but we're going to have a conversation with employers soon to get their perspective.
Right. But the reality is that a lot of them will tell you that there is a cost associated with paying for labor, and as their argument is, Social Security rates going up, it's more expensive for me. I'm going to cut down on
but
my
it
staff.
is more expensive.
It's more expensive.
I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. I'm just empirical observation. It's more expensive.
For me, it's not a discussion about whether or not it's right or wrong. Right? The simple reality is this is what is happening.
Right.
It's
more expensive.
So let's say we agree it's more expensive. Is the challenge therefore not for the employer to find ways to increase the output of his employees, which helps to lessen the cost because there is still greater income? Long and short of it, the person should be generating the means to pay for that increase.
Agreed.
If they are not,
then
that is where you have a legitimate reason to say that the costs are going up, but I'm not seeing that corresponding change in output.
I hope no union people listening, because they're going to tackle us on that.
No, I mean,
but I agree with you. I
argue with union people about this all the time. We don't agree with the whole concept of how productivity is defined and how we should look at productivity. I mean, my person that they often mistake me for all the time, which is my good friend Mr. Messiah, right? I have often said to him, one of the things that you should not argue with me about is productivity, right? Because the straight economic definition of what productivity is, we all know that we are not as productive as we think we ought to be. A lot of us go to work and mark time.
Yes. We're not discussing productivity today, Mr. Matthias, but I should, yes, you are knowledgeable in that field. By the way, Mr. Matthias is an economist. He doesn't like to advertise that part. He likes to leave poor me one to face the firing lines. But we are all schooled in the same field. Yes. So, back to where we were. So, we now have an idea as to what goes on for the most people in Social Security. I'm not going to ask about the high and the low and all that. I think you've ventilated on that enough times in various mediums. So I want to talk a bit about just remind us of the benefits that one gets for contributing to Social Security.
Well, our benefits are divisible between short term and long term.
Right.
Obviously, the long term would be your pension. And for the next few years up until 2025, there is a concept known as an early age pension. So you have those two as a long term. In the short term, you have, I couldn't forget survivors either, because if I did, my staff would probably have my head.
What's the survivors?
That is where a person is, based on our regulations, where the survivor of a male beneficiary, his pension is spread across whether he has dependent children and his dependent spouse. So she receives that as a survivor until the day she remarries, cohabits, or dies herself.
So, I am married. Okay, I were to get married and my husband dies. I get the survivor's pension.
Yes.
So what happens if I die?
Of course, depending on your age. And since you're a young woman, you're only getting it for a year.
What?
Yes. You would only get it for a year.
Why?
Because you're at an age where you can continue working, or you could seek employment for yourself.
Oh, so the survivor's pension only works for prolonged periods if you're not working?
Yep. For prolonged period is dependent on your age. So if you are, for example, the spouse of a man, well, in their case, and you are
better be a man. Oh no, in my case, it'll be a man. You carry on. I ain't married nobody else.
Right. And you are 51, 52. Then in essence it means, and I go between 51 and 52 because we are in a state of changing the regulations, so it would reflect the movement in our pension age.
Okay.
Right? So at that age, the assumption is going to be that you would now be entirely dependent upon your husband. So the loss of your husband means that you should receive that benefit, or at least half of that benefit, until...
If I wasn't working.
No, if you are dependent, you're married, you're espoused to him, and you don't have anything to do with whether or not you're working.
Okay.
You could be working and
Nice.
you will be entitled to your own pension in your own right, but you're entitled to half of his because you were his dependent wife throughout a portion of his working years.
And if I get remarried?
Then it stops.
And if the woman dies and leaves the man?
Then unfortunately, even though it's something that we are working to fix,
What?
we have not yet
Suppose
changed
the
that
woman
balance.
was making more than the man. Therefore, the woman was the dominant financial only partner in the household. And for example, maybe she was paying the mortgage and and then she dies, and then what happens to the man?
The man currently under our regulations has no
Alias
recourse.
sexist.
No, we're not. Recognize that
Discriminatory.
recognize that when the Social Security Act came into being, which is 1972, the phenomenon then was that
It was a wonderful year, by the way. Go ahead.
there
sorry.
were more men working then than there were women. Actually, the expectation was that a man went to work to take care of home, and as a consequence,
That's 40-something years later.
yes, and 40-something years yet, it is one of those things that needs drastically to change in our act, and we have been, and in our regulations, and we've been understandably in some instances, but
Understandably,
yes.
in this day and age, few women may make more than men, and they're in a spousal relationship. And if the woman dies, she leaves the poor man to look after the children and, the household with less income.
And we do accept that.
Anyways, let's just not dwell on it. I will lobby on behalf of my brothers
Later on.
that needs to be addressed soonest, among the other things.
We are currently working on it.
Okay.
It has been very slow, but we are working on it.
So that's survivor's benefits.
Right.
What
So
else?
that's the long term. And then you have short term. Obviously, you would have sickness, maternity, and the funeral grant.
Okay. Maternity. It's still $560.
Yes, the grant is $560.
When is it going? Cost of living today, compared to like 40-something years ago.
As with most things, I explain to everyone, everything that we do is actuarially driven. So,
And the actuary don't realize yet that it costs more to raise bring a child yet?
the actuary is taking into account that the maternity benefit means it's an absence from work. That is, you're replacing income from a person who would ordinarily be at work. So for that period that because of owing to childbirth, you are not able, and that period of bonding, it is covered that Social Security replaces a percentage or a proportion of your income, right, relative to the Social Security ceiling itself. That is something I often have to add because there is this presumption
Yes.
that that it's 100% of your salary. So if you are earning $9,000, please let us understand that the Social Security ceiling is $6,500. So it means that you're receiving relative that $6,500, not relative the $9,000.
Okay, noted. I still think 560 is. Oh, by the way, do the men receive paternity benefits here?
No.
So what do men? What do men get out of Social Security?
Their
Pension?
pensions
Oh, okay, cool. All right, carry on. Right.
and their sickness benefit, depending on if they work for the private sector.
Okay, fair enough.
But we have been looking at the concept of paternity, but that again would have to be something that is actuarially driven. Equally, it would require a significant decision to be made, because for you to accommodate paternity, one will have to pay for it. That is, you have to contribute.
But you contribute for maternity?
Of course you do. You break down. If you look at the private sector and you look at the private sector contribution, only so much of it goes to covering your pension. The remainder goes to covering your
so we'd have to
benefits.
look at discussing, because you don't normally pay short-term benefits for men. They're not included in what we pay for now.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
nobody, all right. Plus, there is the notion that paternity leave, there might be men that may need 2 or 3 per year.
No.
That would not be applicable.
It wouldn't.
I'm just saying, if they have 2 or 3 children per
No,
year,
it is. There is a limitation, just as there are for women, in that you
a woman can only have 2 children in a year maximum.
Correct.
So they can get 2 maternity leaves in a year?
Correct.
Right. Maximum.
Correct.
But a man can...
But recognize if you have 2 births within a period of time, it is going to, each time, because remember you have to be working 26 in the 52 weeks just prior to your having the child. So if, for all intents and purposes, it takes 9 months.
So if I have the first child and for whatever reason I get pregnant again before 26 weeks, I'm not entitled to maternity leave for the second child?
No.
Oh.
Because you wouldn't be working, assuming you weren't working. You may be working during that period of time, but you have to be working the 26 weeks.
So if I worked for 10 years and then had my first child and then had my second child shortly after, that's like that's like 52 times 10, that's 520 weeks.
It does not work like that. I'm sorry to tell you, it doesn't work like that. So realistically speaking, a person could only cover within a particular period of time 2 children. Beyond that, right, you will be putting yourself at risk of you're more likely only ever receive and you couldn't receive the grant because you wouldn't have qualified for the benefit because you weren't working. You understand the dilemma.
I
that
hear
doesn't
you.
mean though.
I'm not going to say I follow you. I hear you.
A woman could benefit if her spouse, in this instance, was working
for the 26 weeks
and was working and was contributing to Social Security. The benefit would be that you would still get the 560 and just that, the grant, right? So we do see a number of, and the men know this, so the men come in for the money. They're not allowing to let the woman come in and collect.
The men come in for the money?
Antidote. That's
because I was going to ask you when they have picnic, but never mind. Okay.
You can't have a child without a man.
Sickness, but no, I was just asking when they push out the picnic. I know that. I know. We need them to have the children, rest assured. Although I hear about test tube babies going on nowadays and 2 women having children and 2 men having children. Anyways, we digress. Yes sickness benefits.
Yes,
by the way, so Social Security is equipped to deal with those kind of things, like 2 men and 2 women having children and so.
Social Security covers what is known.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Social Security covers.
This is modern times, guys.
The long and short of it.
Sickness benefits. Let me save you. Let me rescue you.
To answer you.
Sickness benefits. Go ahead.
Sickness benefit. Obviously, that is also another short-term benefit that you have. Normally, there has been some discussion between us and Labour because there seems to be a lot of confusion that takes place with the employer population. On the Social Security Act, the employer who is paying on behalf of his employee for the purpose of coverage for sickness, that employer has the option of saying to that employee, look, after the first 3 days of your illness and Social Security kicks in, I may choose to say I'm already covered you, so I'm only paying you 40%. This is, again, problematic because under the labor code, an employer is required to pay an employee 100% of their salary. They only have an option in that they can recourse to Social Security. What we're seeing a number of employers do, which whether it's preferred or otherwise is conjecture at this point, but we've seen employers who still cover the 100% and they recover from that employee when Social Security pays
the check. Yes.
The challenge with that goes right back again to
the employee is not obligated.
But the employer is obligated to
pay.
The employee is not obligated to sign over the money.
Right.
Because it is actually the employee's money. Right? Now, in which case, it becomes a matter of negotiation between the employer and the employee. But the point that I was trying to get to is that the particular challenge for employers when they're doing so is this whole concept that there is a Social Security wage or there's a Social Security ceiling. You may have an employee who earns greater than. So if you've paid them 100%, you will only recover a portion of that from Social Security based on the ceiling. In which case, you have a lot of employers saying, this is not the money that I would have paid the employer. But in truth, that is what they're supposed to be paying the employee, 100% of their salary. Right? So Social Security...
Do you think employers are aware, though?
Employers are very aware that they have the ability to recourse to Social Security. Many of them do, in which case they pay 40, 60. But this only works within certain income brackets. right? Anyone else, it will be problematic.
Okay. Gotcha.
So you see
Very
those persons earning $1,700 and or below $3,000, they're covered.
They're fine.
And
Yes.
they have absolutely no issues.
Right. Okay, gotcha. All right. What's the maximum number of weeks someone can claim for a sickness benefit? Absolute maximum. Is there an absolute maximum?
An absolute maximum, 156.
Okay.
After that, they obviously need to visit the doctor to determine whether or not they're capable of working. Because that really represents half of a year.
And if I am at Point FM, they don't pay me, by the way, so don't go looking for a salary. But if Point FM were to pay me, I'm teasing him. If Point FM were to pay me and I slip and fall when I'm walking out the building, and I go to the doctor and the doctor puts me on sick leave for 2 weeks, who's responsible for that?
See, it occurred whilst on your place of employ.
Right. So it's Social Security.
No, it occurred whilst you're on your place of employment.
So it's not Social Security.
No, Social Security does not cover you for work-related illnesses.
But how is Social Security able to make a distinction between me slipping and falling at work and me slipping and falling outside on the road? Because you would cover me if I'm slip and fall on the road.
Normally your employer is going to indicate, or even for that matter, when it becomes an issue of invalidity, right? Persons will indicate that this occurred whilst in the execution of their duties. Once that is the case, then it means that it's a work-related injury which is covered on the workman's
compensation,
not on the Social Security.
Do you have instances of persons confusing the issue?
Yeah, it's very easy to conflate the issue when it comes to being injured. Let's use your example. You may be just walking out of the door from work, which is to say work has ceased. So it's technically speaking, it may be a non-work related injury because
I am finished.
You're finished working.
My day's done.
You were not engaged in work. You just happened to be on the compound whilst you were doing it, or whilst you're going to your vehicle. You know, your heel broke and you twist your ankle, etc. Right? No, those are things that are understandable. Right? Having gone to the doctor is not going to ask you whether or not where you were when it occurred. The doctor is going to simply indicate that you twisted your ankle. That's all we're really interested in, that the doctor is confirmed that you are indeed incapacitated.
So I slipped and fell in the studio and I twisted my ankle. I go to the doctor and said, Doc, I twisted my ankle at work. No, I twisted my ankle today and I need the doctor says, okay, you need some days off and give you the time. Let me wrap this up and let me add a little. And then 6 weeks later, I have already got my sick leave money from Social Security and I realize the injury not getting any better. And I come harass my boss, I'm following in your business, we need workman's comp. What's going on here?
6 months would be a little bit
6 weeks, sorry. 6 weeks. Yes.
Okay, 6 weeks.
3 to 6 weeks. Say 3
to 6 weeks.
Right.
You could make in that time a workman's comp claim, but you recognize that workman's comp now means they're going to have to ask certain questions of your employer, which is, were you negligent? Were you spinning around in the chair?
Right.
Were you doing this?
But no, I think that the critical thing I wanted to know is if, let's say, I went to the doctor, I got my sick leave. As per course, it's submitted to Social Security for Social Security to cover. Can I then, recognizing that it's employer related, being employed related, can I also then claim from my employer workman's comp?
You could theoretically under law, but there is just that one gray area. You would have already benefited from the point that you have gotten a sickness claim. Right. Now, your one should supersede the other. That's all I'm saying. So if
what does the employer do? If the employer knows I have already submitted to Social Security for you to get your sickness benefits, and now you're coming to tell me about workman's comp, what does an employer do?
If you're bringing that to me, then as an employer, I'm going to have to tell him, I'm going to have to cancel the sickness claim in favor of the workman's comp, because you can't be compensated twice for the same injury.
Fair enough.
Or shouldn't be compensated twice. I'm being very careful with my language.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Now, I want to, ladies and gentlemen, sorry, you're listening to We're the Ones on Point FM, and we're speaking to Mr. David Matthias, the executive director at Social Security. And we're touching on some issues outside the norm that he would have spoken numerous times on. We're just trying to, add some value to the public discourse. One of the things I wanted to touch, Mr. Matthias, is the whole issue of retirement and the pension that one gets when one retires. What's the minimum retiree gets?
$350.
That is below the $1,700, the $2,500 that you mentioned earlier. This ILO thing, boss. What you said, anyways. Yes. And what's the maximum one can get?
Based on our regulations,
Yes.
that is 50% of your Social Security wage, which is $3,250.
So if you are from the bottom end, you can get $350.
Yeah.
And if you would have been paying at the maximum ceiling contribution, you can get $3,200. $3,250. Okay. Based on this most popular salary that persons pay on, based on what you said, and even going backwards, because we're now today at 1,700 and previously we were at 1,000 and so on. What's the most popular pension amount that persons get?
The most popular pension amount?
Or the popular range?
I'm going to give you the range.
Yes.
It's somewhere between 750.
That's not so bad then.
Right? Sorry, it's not so bad? No, it's not. It's not bad.
Between 750 and
1,400. Right?
We're still below that 2,500.
But what you would now be recognizing is that the 5 years has passed, or roughly 3 years or more have passed since we have adjusted the ceiling. So it means that they are going to be persons who will be retiring in the next 3 or 4 years who could potentially be earning a pension of $3,000 and more, right? Closer to the maximum than before. I believe we've already had at least 2 persons who have retired, or rather, let me put it this way, they may not have retired, but they may have accessed their pension,
right,
who would have reached the maximum. Now, that would not have been the case in the past, because the maximum in the past would have been $2,000, right? So
yes,
because it's moved.
Right.
Remember the max or ceiling before was 4,500.
Right.
Right. So
okay, I get you.
So you would break it down and you work out the difference between. So it would have been $2,250 before. It's now $3,250 that you're making an additional. Persons could earn an additional $1,000. The interesting thing about that is that 2 years into a person receiving a pension, the person is likely to have exhausted all that the individual would have contributed to Social Security. Because we believe that we're contributing...
Stop. I know you want to go through it. I want to make sure that you break this down for John Public. So I worked 40 years of my life and contributed to Social Security little every month. And we cry because it's gone up by a 0.5 percentage point. At the point of retirement, within 2 years of that, I would have used up all of the monies I would have contributed over that 40 years.
Yeah.
No joke you make.
Sit down and think about it.
I'm just saying so for the people they can understand. But people are collecting pensions for like 15, 20, 22 years. Good afternoon, Daddy. How are you? 22 years, 23.
And those persons are actually taking
my pension money?
Yeah. Because as you are contributing now, they have actually lived longer than the actuaries expected them to live. Right?
How long does the actuary expect us to live anyways?
Looking at the life tables, we're saying roughly between 5 and 7 years. After retirement.
Yeah, actuary half crazy.
Because remember, you're looking at the life expectancy of males, right? So there was a time, a long time ago, when you looked at a man, and it was unusual for a man to live past the age 50. So having live past the age of 50, yeah.
I want them life expectancy tables. Go ahead.
Right, because living conditions were much different then. They had
how close you are to 50. I had to tease you. Sorry.
I know how close I am to 50, right? But fortunately for us, even though we have a much more stressful...
I am not as close to 50 as you, sorry. I have at least 1 year on you.
Right? As much as it is stressful to exist and to live today. There are also advances in medicine that help us to prolong life.
Agreed.
And because the life expectancy for women has always been greater than that of men, the test of any social
that's a
security
good
system
thing
is
still.
how do you care
For the men.
for the men?
But I hear you. But my thoughts are, and I am not an actuary, so don't think I'm taking the actuary's work in my very basic way. But looking around Antigua in the last 5-10 years, men are living beyond 70 and 75.
Correct.
So
Which
the
is
life expectancy would be significantly more.
which is exactly the reason why the Social Security pension age had to go up. It could never remain static.
But you're adding like 2, 3, 4 years.
You're adding
5
years
Uh-huh.
to it, right? In the first instance, it could very well be that come 2025, there is a need for us to go and add on an additional 3 years, an additional 4 years.
In what year is this?
2025 is when we reach 65. The reason why I say this, I like to prepare persons for what is happening.
Buzz, that is not a good idea.
No, but look at it.
And that is me being purely selfish, but you make sense.
No, but look at Barbados, look at Trinidad, look at Jamaica, look at Dominica, right? Dominica is a perfect example. Dominica has taken the option to move to 65. They have done so incrementally. They're doing so months rather than as we're doing years. We're doing the years because we're in a much more critical stage than they are. Now, I know that for Dominica, as in Barbados, when they start to approach 65 and persons are still living, and Dominica, I use Dominica and Barbados as examples because the percentage of centenarians within that population is significant.
Yes, that is true.
Right? So, in reality, 65 may seem far off for us, but in Barbados, the average pensioner may be as much as old as 75. And if that is the case, then that means that persons retiring at 65 have been drawing from Social Security for near 10 years.
Near 10?
Right? I'm being very generous. I'm being very generous. Right? So if you're 85, you retired at 65, that's 20 years. You're living until 100, that's near 40 years. You're drawing a pension.
So
right?
that's you've drawn out at least 18.
You've drawn out another
9
generation.
persons. Geez,
You've drawn another generation's pension.
And so though they need a next generation after
to fund
them to fund
their
theirs.
pension.
All right. So now I want to. So persons understand that you pay in your contributions, you get to your pension age, and within 24 months, you would have withdrawn what you would have contributed into the system. All right. So that I want to put it on the record. Now, your views on another aspect of this whole retirement and pension system. We have 3 predominant ways that we fund our pensions now. Well, older people, we either depend on our Social Security pension. For those of us who work for government, we depend on that government non-contributory pension. I need to have a talk about that. And then there are those who would have done their private pensions, thrift funds, and so on. Do you think, with a general acceptance based on the ILO's living
decent
wage, which we can translate into decent income, because that's what you need to live from. So you're saying you need at least $2,500 to live well. And as an older person, then you have other challenges to living well. You know, with old age comes certain other challenges, right? Do you think that enough of us in Antigua and Barbuda, or based on your experience, based on your knowledge, your interactions with various segments of the economy, do you think enough of us are appreciating that we need to plan for our retirement beyond the Social Security?
No. That's the short and simple answer, no.
Jeez.
When I was growing up, my mother and my father used to have this thing of saying to us, they're going to save for the day when they retire because they're not entirely sure we were going to go and look after them, right? It sounded funny at the time because as a child, you'd think that, one of the responsibilities you want to hold dear is caring for your parents. So you're insulted by it.
But that costs a lot.
Right? But then you realize, at least I realize now, that if that were the case, my parents would have become a burden to me. Right? Not that it wouldn't be a burden that one wouldn't be happily accept, but that burden means that one day it forced me to start to recognize that, look, planning for one's retirement is beyond not being a burden and not being a difficulty to your children, right? It's about being able to maintain the quality
independence
and the quality of life.
Okay.
And the challenge for most persons is that for very many years, we at Social Security have done an excellent job of letting persons know that we're there for them in their declining years.
Yeah, but you're not there for them in the sums that they need.
Correct. Which is where I said we have done an excellent job. We have done a remarkable job of selling the fact that we are there for them when they have that need.
To the point where they don't look for anything else.
Correct.
It's
and
your
that
fault.
that is where the challenge now is for us to embrace a new role that we will obviously have to
Undertake.
Which is to let persons understand, look, Social Security is an essential part, but it's not the end and end all of your retirement. If I want to speak in economics language, Social Security is necessary, but it's not the sufficient condition to ensure your well-being in retirement. So they have to. That must be supplemented elsewhere, whether it's a private contributory scheme that you go into. We hope that at some point in time our financial system would have advanced such that banks would consider reverse mortgages, that persons would have sufficient equity in their property, that the bank literally allows that equity to be drawn down on, right, in that person's pension years, rather than the person having a continued mortgage payment that they would have to make when income is now fixed, right? But the reality is one has to think of Social Security, or even simply, I ask people this all the time, does your becoming 62 remove from you the requirement to pay your property tax?
No.
Does it change that you have to license and insure your vehicle?
No.
No. Does it change that you have to repair your home?
No.
Does it change that you have insurance to pay on that same property?
No.
If all of those things remain, then when one is looking at retirement, your income in retirement has to still do the exact same things it was doing when you're working.
I have Social Security.
Social Security is not sufficient. $32.50. If you're accustomed to working for $9, $10, $12, $15, $50,000 a month, and you're now down to $3,250, right? How would you do all of the things that you're accustomed to doing? Because when you were working, you were living in a house that your $50,000 allowed you. It's the same house you're living in.
Time to get rid of the house.
And these are decisions that persons would realistically have to make. Do I have a smaller property where the tax draw is less? Do I opt to take government's option of, because of my age, take the tax break, knowing that whomever inherits this property from me, they
will
have
to pay
it back to the government. These are the realities of deciding or making that decision. When do I stop working? And what is a livable pension for me when one does that?
Do you think we have sufficient of these types of conversations going on? I know we have a plethora of insurance companies that offer life insurance, one option. They offer also the pension plans and so on. And I think some of the banks, you can also have your pension plans and so on. Do you think that either we have enough of this going on? Just yesterday, this wasn't about pension, it was about health insurance. A question was asked on our favorite platform that if health insurance is too expensive, and the conversation basically evolved around, it's about your priorities. What are your plans? But then I want to introduce to you and posit to you, especially for that popular income bracket, the 1700s, the 2500s, that do they really have space to begin this planning that we want them to do, in the context of, and I'm not going to keep you on it too long because I know you're not the primary person, but just in terms of, the broader economic discussion, these persons have the children, they have the elders who would have gone before them who are now dependent on them, and they still have to live. How do we make room in these kinds of challenging times to not be the next generation that lives only on a social security pension? So then every month, the 30th of the month, we begin to clamor because we need that money to live, literally to live and stretch until the end of the month.
It's interesting that you put it that way, come the 30th or the 31st of the month, because that has been the thing that I've been telling at least certain segments of my staff. The reason why persons are so enraged is the word I would use, but they're vexed, they're perplexed, they're bothered at the end of the month is precisely because we, as not only as a social security but as a nation, we have failed to prepare ourselves for the day. The day that we're not going to work is going to come. It may come
Can we
by
afford to
force.
prepare?
No, you're going into a different realm and a different discussion. It's the discussion.
That's for another day, but that's a question.
It's a discussion that needs to be had.
Mm-hmm.
That I have the answer, I'm not certain, right? Because the question does: do we truly produce? We have a GDP of what, 2 billion, 2 point something billion, and if you look at the distribution of the wealth, right, 80-something% of the wealth that is generated in this country is held in the hands of a segment of the population which is less than 5% of the population holds 80-something% of that wealth, right?
Is that unique to Antigua?
No, it's the world trend, and the strange thing with it being the world trend is the challenge now is how do states or governments transfer from that body to those persons who are most needy. I've said on a different radio station before, what we're seeing is an almost complete erosion of what is known as the middle class.
Middle class, right.
Right? There's no bridge anymore. You're either...
And that's happening in Antigua as well.
Yeah, you're either super rich...
So that's why I asked you earlier.
Or
if you
functionally...
So indirectly you've answered my question, because my question was, we mentioned that the median, the most popular wage, has gone from 1,000 to 1,700. And then I asked you, those other bands in between, if we're seeing growth in those. And what you're suggesting to me now is that we may not be seeing the kinds of growth that we would like.
No. And I've said so on numerous occasions. We still have significant distributional issues in terms of income.
Hold on. Our population is more educated,
yes,
in brackets, today than they were 10 years ago. So wouldn't being a more educated population, suggest that you are earning more?
Yes. It would suggest that you are earning more. And in many instances, those persons are earning more. There comes another challenge where employers will say to those educated individuals, look, you're just too educated for me to pay you. I can't afford to pay you.
This wonderful circle.
Right? So you find persons winding up taking jobs. I give you this as an antidote. There is a gentleman who came to see me one time, and he said, look, this is my challenge. I sent my daughter off to university, and she's come back, and the only job she can get is being a bank teller. I didn't spend so much thousands of dollars, hundreds and thousands of dollars to send her off to the university to get a degree for her to come back to count somebody's money. Now, here's me trying to tell him, but that's just a foot in the door. Because she has that university degree, it means that she can assimilate information quicker. So it means that today she may be a teller, tomorrow she may be the supervisor of the tellers, and then tomorrow she may be the treasury and etc.
We know how that works,
right? But you have to start somewhere. The problem in Antigua is that we assume that having gone to university, right, means that certain jobs are beneath us, right?
Let me phrase that. Let me put a little different light on that. Is it that persons believe that certain jobs are beneath them, or is it a concern that they get locked into this job at this pay, and therefore that they don't see that trajectory upwards that you're suggesting?
That could be it. That really could be it. I know that when I left university, I won't say how many years ago, right? I know when I left university, this was the challenge that I faced. The jobs that were on offer, the largest salary that was available,
ridiculous,
was $3,200 and something.
What? You got a better paying job than me when we left university?
No, I didn't get a better paying job. I said the jobs that were on offer, right? The job that I wound up getting was a job that paid me half of that, right?
Oh, okay.
And then it just basically meant that because I wanted to live a particular way, I had two jobs. Because I get one paying me 50 and one paying me this.
I remember
and
that.
I added all of that up together to come up to the income that I wanted. But I recognized that there was a particular level of income that I wanted. There was a particular way I wish to live. And if it meant that I had to push myself.
But David, to be fair, there can only be one director of Social Security.
Agreed.
There can only be one head of state insurance. There can only be one supervisor of banking. There can only be one. The point I'm making is that, and we're looking to wrap this up in a bit, and I want to thank you so much for being here, is that I think the challenge that we're having in Antigua as it relates to that is perhaps we're not broadening the base, or maybe there's no capacity to broaden the base and types of employment in Antigua and Barbuda just by volume of what we are, so that there will be many of us who, despite our level of education, will get locked into these wage bands that may not offer us the best.
I hear you. I hear you.
Just say.
I don't 100% agree with you.
Okay, fair
but
enough.
I hear you. This is what my hope is, that we recognize. There was a time that we were in a monoculture, sugar was it, cotton was it.
Tourism is it.
Right? And that is where our problem lies. We believe that the thing that worked well for someone, it's working well. So that's the model to follow. If everyone is doing the same thing, then there's nothing different.
Fair enough.
The challenge for all of these educated individuals is, what innovation am I bringing to the Antiguan economy? What's something new?
Scope is there for innovation?
There is a lot of scope. There is a lot of scope for innovation.
We're going to discuss that.
Right?
Consider this, that we will bring you back outside of your director capacity to have a broader discussion. Just to wrap up now, and ladies and gentlemen, we are speaking to Mr. David Matthias, the Executive Director of Social Security, and we're the ones on Point FM. And we've been having a very varied discussion about Social Security and its role in our economy, and in particular how it evolves in terms of the contributions and where we are. To wrap up, I know that Social Security they have an investment portfolio, which is part of what funds the payments going out and so on. How is that performing?
It has been performing subpar, if I use the investment language.
Listen,
right?
you talk to Antiguan people regularly.
All right,
Listen.
regular Antiguan people.
Thank you.
That means that if we're supposed to earn $6 for $6 on every dollar invested, we are actually earning $3 on every dollar. So that means we're earning $3 less than where we're supposed to be. For us, we are working at trying to rebase the portfolio such that we can have that yield and that return, which is going to redound to your benefit, in that we'll be making more timely payments. We are looking for new investment avenues, one of which is in areas of innovation and areas of change, because for Social Security, our investment must be driven by the value added that is going to be created. And that value added is from the security of employment that comes from it. So some of our areas of interest are obviously in manufacturing. We have very limited with how much venture capital we can do.
You do venture capital?
It's a very, very small portion of our portfolio. right?
You have done venture capital in Antigua?
No.
Oh, you do venture capital outside of Antigua?
No, we're not allowed to do anything outside.
But there is scope for venture capital.
There is scope, yes. Written into our investment policy statement is scope for venture capital, assuming, of course, that the requisite due diligence has been done.
Yes.
And the agency the agency that does that due diligence for us currently is the central bank, right? As a matter of fact,
never mind. We won't be getting any investment. Next, carry on.
I beg to differ.
You haven't done any yet, have you?
No.
I rest my case.
We haven't done any because the
central bank is more conservative than ACB, and there ain't nobody more conservative than ACB.
And the reason why the central bank is so conservative is that the central bank deems, as you well know, its prime responsibility is in the maintenance of
I am outside the system. I can push the system.
Right, all right. No problem. Push away.
Yeah. And the reason why I raised the investment, even though we're out of time, the investment portfolio, is that I want persons to be appreciative of the fact that you guys are not just sitting there with your hands twiddling, just watching everything tick-tock. All right. And that's what I wanted to raise that, and we'll have to come back and have a discussion on that. David, what's the one thing you would want to leave in the minds of your contributors going away from our discussion today?
The one thing that I would want our contributors to bear in mind, and notice I said contributors, not the beneficiaries.
I said contributors. Me too. I didn't say beneficiaries. I said contributors. In other words, those of you all who paying the money, not those of you all who getting a loan, just those who get paying. Okay.
Right, those who are paying.
Some of you who pay get, just so you know. But
the time has come for us to reach to a place where we begin to plan for the day when I won't be able to make that contribution. I want us to become the masters of our destiny rather than the slaves of it. Right? We know that there's going to come a point in time when we're not working. We're not going to work. As a matter of fact, I was having a discussion with a colleague the other day, and I said to them, I'm approaching that time, like my 10-year window, right, when I now need to establish
double up, level up.
Yeah, right, so I need to establish something where I'm transitioning from working for someone, where that entity is working for me, and it is supplementing that pension that I have from employment, supplementing my private pension plan, supplementing everything.
Oh, you have options, man.
Yeah, I have options because I've exercised options. Because, as I said, seeing what happened with my parents opened my eyes significantly to what is needed to secure oneself.
And having the income space. Carry on. I'm just saying so because I'm reminded that some of us won't have that.
No, I am fully aware of that. That is indeed an asset. But there are many of us that have ideas that can be and can create that sort of fiscal space, that space that we are looking for, that extra dollar here.
So you're saying to our listening contributors to take their retirement planning and packaging seriously?
Yes.
All right. Well, Mr. Matthias, I want to thank you very much for being with us today. It was very eye-opening, very good information.
Happy to be here.
I hope much benefited from our sharing, and consider this. No, well, based on what I'm seeing now, cussing maybe a little later when you replay. But you normally get a cuss?
All the time. I'm accustomed to it now.
I try and help bring a little different perspective. So thank you very much for joining us, and consider this your open door that you can come back at any time.
I will do just that.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, there you had Mr. David Matthias, and we will be right back after this break.
The Antigua and Barbuda Festivals Commission, under the auspices of the Honorable Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, presents the One Nation Concert. Saturday, 11th January from 8 p.m. at the Antigua Recreation Grounds, with live entertainment out of Kingston, Jamaica by Coffee. Massacre. From the nature island of Dominica, Asa Banton. And our live acts from here at home: Tian Winter, Claudette Peters, Menace, Low Rider, Asha Otto, Nature Kid and John Mark, Juba, and Voices. Music by DJ Quest, DJ Attach, and hosted by Jesse